Somewhere in North America, on the 24th of June 2026, a 39-year-old man will walk out of a tunnel and into a football stadium. 80,000 people will be on their feet, billions more will be watching from home, and for a few hours the entire world, every continent, every language, every nation, will hold its breath together, because they know something that has never been true before in the history of this sport. This is the last time. The very last time Lionel Messi will play at a World Cup. And the question hanging over every single moment of this tournament, the question that no one can stop asking, is this: can he do it again? Can a 39-year-old man, playing at his sixth World Cup, become the first player in history to lift that trophy twice as captain? No one has ever done it. Not Pele, not Maradona, not anyone. But then again, there has never been anyone like Lionel Messi. And to understand why this moment feels so enormous, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. You have to go back to a city called Rosario, Argentina, and you have to meet a boy who was told, by doctors, that his own body was betraying him. Rosario is a port city on the Paraná River in central Argentina. It is the kind of place where football is not just a sport, it is a religion, a language, a way of breathing. Jorge Messi worked in a steel factory. His wife Celia cleaned houses. They were not wealthy, they were not connected. They were a working-class family in a working-class city, and their youngest son, a small, shy, wide-eyed boy, could do something with a football that no one in the neighborhood had ever seen. Lionel Andres Messi was born on the 24th of June, 1987. From the moment he could walk, he chased a ball. By age 6, he was training with the youth academy of Newell's Old Boys, one of the two big clubs in Rosario. And even at that age, even as a tiny child among other tiny children, something was different about him. The way he moved, the way he saw space that didn't exist yet, the way the ball seemed to be attached to his left foot by an invisible string. But when Messi was around 10 years old, his family noticed something troubling. He wasn't growing. While his teammates got taller, while boys his age were shooting up, Messi stayed small. His parents took him to a doctor. The diagnosis came back: growth hormone deficiency, a condition where the body cannot produce enough of the hormone it needs to grow and develop properly. The treatment existed. It was straightforward: nightly injections of synthetic human growth hormone directly into his own legs. He would have to inject himself every single night, but the cost was around $900 a month. For a steelworkers family in Argentina in the late 90s, that was an impossible amount of money. Newell's Old Boys refused to cover it. River Plate, one of the biggest clubs in Argentina, was approached. They watched Messi train. They saw everything his coaches had been telling them. And then they said no. The risk was too high. The cost was too uncertain. No Argentine club would pay for a boy, however gifted, who came with a medical bill attached. Jorge Messi refused to accept that his son's dream would end because of a piece of paper with numbers on it. He started making calls, across Argentina, then across the Atlantic, to Europe, to a club in Spain that had built the finest youth academy in world football, FC Barcelona. In late 2000, a 13-year-old boy and his father boarded a plane from Argentina to Spain. Messi had never left South America. He had never been on a long-haul flight. He barely spoke Spanish, let alone Catalan. He arrived in Barcelona carrying almost nothing except the thing that had always been with him, that extraordinary, inexplicable gift. Barcelona's sporting director at the time was a man named Carlos Rexach. He watched Messi train for approximately 30 seconds before he had made his decision. But within the club there was hesitation. Messi was foreign. He was 13. He had a medical condition. The paperwork and the cost would be complicated. Some inside the club wanted to wait, to discuss, to run it through committees. The Messi family grew anxious. Weeks passed with no official commitment. They were in a foreign country, waiting for a phone call that might never come. They began to wonder whether they had made a terrible mistake. Then came a moment that would become one of the most famous stories in football history. At a restaurant, or possibly a tennis club, accounts differ slightly. Carlos Rexach sat down with Messi's agents and the boy's family, and right there, with no official document available, with no formal contract prepared, he reached across the table, picked up a paper napkin, and wrote on it by hand. The note said, roughly translated, "In Barcelona, on the 14th of December 2000, and in the presence of Messrs. Minguella and Horacio, Carlos Rexach, FC Barcelona's sporting director, hereby agrees, under his own responsibility and regardless of any dissenting opinions, to sign the player Lionel Messi." A contract written on a napkin. Barcelona would pay for his treatment, Barcelona would give him a chance. That napkin was sold at auction in London in May 2024 for £762,000, the most valuable serviette in human history. And every night during those years of treatment, the boy from Rosario injected his own legs with growth hormone. Quietly, without complaint. While other boys slept, he prepared his needle, pressed it into his skin, and told himself it would be worth it. It was worth it. By the time Messi was 16, he had burned through Barcelona's youth system like a fire through dry grass. He scored 21 goals in 14 games for the under-14 team. He moved to the under-16s, then the B team, then the reserves, and then, on the 16th of October 2004, a 17-year-old Lionel Messi made his first team debut for FC Barcelona. He came on as a substitute. He was on the pitch for less than a minute before picking up a yellow card. His debut lasted 60 seconds. It didn't matter. Over the next 18 years at Barcelona, Messi would win 10 La Liga titles, 4 Champions League trophies, and a record 8 Ballon d'Or awards. He would score more than 860 goals across his career. He would be named the best player in the world so many times that people stopped counting. But there was always one thing missing. The one thing that Maradona had and Messi didn't. The World Cup. Germany. Messi was 18 years old. He became Argentina's youngest ever World Cup goal scorer when he came off the bench and scored in a 6-0 victory over Serbia and Montenegro. The football world got its first proper look at what was coming. Argentina were knocked out in the quarterfinals by the host nation Germany, losing on penalties. Messi barely featured in the big matches. He was young. He had time. South Africa. Argentina were one of the tournament favorites, managed by the legendary Diego Maradona himself. Messi was 22. He was already being called the best player on the planet. The pressure was enormous. In the quarterfinal, Germany dismantled them, 4-0. It wasn't close. Messi had flashes of brilliance in the group stage but went quiet when it mattered most. Argentina went home. The criticism was quiet, but it was there. Brazil. This was supposed to be the year. Messi was 26. He was at the absolute peak of his powers. He won the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player. He scored goals. He created magic. He dragged Argentina almost single-handedly through the group stage and the knockout rounds, all the way to the final. The final was against Germany, at the Maracanã in Rio de Janeiro, in front of 75,000 people. For 90 minutes, neither team scored. Into extra time. In the 113th minute, a substitute named Mario Götze controlled the ball on his chest and volleyed it past the Argentine goalkeeper. 1-0. Germany. Argentina had 3 minutes to find an equalizer. Messi had one chance. A cross came in from deep. He met it with his head from about 15 yards. The ball rose over the bar. He walked away with his head down, staring at the grass. The final whistle blew, and Lionel Messi, the best footballer in the world, stood in the middle of the Maracanã while 75,000 people celebrated around him. A golden trophy was being lifted somewhere nearby. It wasn't his. Years later, in an interview, he described what it felt like. It would have hurt me a lot if I had not won the World Cup. I've been so affected over many years by the thought of not having it. Losing 2 World Cup finals would have been a huge thorn in my side. He said he thought about that night in Brazil for years afterwards. Russia. Argentina were disorganized, chaotic. They barely qualified. In the round of 16, France knocked them out. A teenage Kylian Mbappé scored twice and turned the match. Messi scored 1 goal. It wasn't enough. He was 30 years old. Time was running out. And the whispers that had always followed him grew louder. He wins at club level. He can't do it for Argentina. He disappears in the big moments. He is not Maradona. He is not a winner when it counts. Messi had heard these words for a decade, and every single one of them landed. Then came 2021. The Copa America, South America's version of the Euros, had been the other tournament that had always escaped him. He had reached 3 finals with Argentina and lost them all. In 2021, playing in Brazil again, Argentina faced the hosts in the final. They won, 1-0. Messi fell to his knees. He held his face in his hands. He wept. Out in the open, in front of the world, he wept. And anyone who had ever doubted him, anyone who had ever said he didn't care, didn't feel it, wasn't Argentine enough, saw something very different in that moment. They saw a man who had carried the weight of an entire nation for 15 years and had finally been allowed to put it down for one night. 1 year later, he arrived in Qatar for what everyone agreed would be his final World Cup. The 2022 World Cup in Qatar began on the 22nd of November. Argentina's first match was against Saudi Arabia. In the 10th minute, Messi scored. Argentina went 1-0 up. They added another goal, then another, and by halftime it seemed like the easiest group game imaginable. Then the second half began. Saudi Arabia leveled. Then they scored again, 2 goals in 4 minutes. Suddenly, in one of the most shocking upsets in World Cup history, Argentina were losing to Saudi Arabia. They lost 2-1. In the dressing room afterwards, players wept. The captain sat in silence. The dream of another World Cup title looked like it might be over before it had properly begun. What happened next is the part that defines Messi more than any trophy, more than any goal, more than any award. He picked his team up. Match by match, game by game, he carried them. He scored in every round of the tournament. The group stage, the round of 16, the quarterfinal, the semifinal, and the final. He became the only player in history to score in every single stage of a World Cup tournament. The final against France was, by common consent, the greatest World Cup final that has ever been played. Argentina led 2-0 with 10 minutes remaining. France scored. Then France scored again in the 97th minute of the match to make it 2-2. Into extra time. In the 108th minute, Messi scored again, 3-2, Argentina back in front. In the 118th minute, Kylian Mbappé completed his hat trick from the penalty spot, 3-3. Penalties. Messi stepped up for the first kick. The goalkeeper went the right way. Messi scored anyway. Argentina won on penalties. And when that final whistle blew, when the moment he had been chasing his entire life finally arrived, Messi did not scream. He did not sprint around the pitch. He stood very still, looked up at the night sky over Lusail Stadium, and cried. Later, alone, when the cameras were gone and the celebrations had quieted, he cried again. "At that moment I couldn't cry," he said, "but later, when everything calmed down and I was at peace, I cried tears of happiness alone." After Qatar, most people assumed it was over. The perfect ending, the storybook final chapter, the redemption that legends are made of. Walk away. Walk away while the world is still applauding. But Messi didn't walk away. He moved to Miami. He played in Major League Soccer. He won the MLS title in 2025, scoring 29 goals in 28 games and finishing as the league's top scorer and top assist provider. At 37, in America, on a pitch far from anything he had grown up with. He kept being called up by Argentina. He kept scoring for them. He was the top scorer in South America's qualifying campaign for the 2026 World Cup, with 8 goals. And when the Argentine squad for 2026 was announced, his name was on the list. Why? No one can say for certain. Not even Messi, probably. Maybe because winning once was beautiful, but winning twice would be something beyond beauty. Something that has no name yet because no one has ever done it. Maybe because the boy who injected his own legs every night in a foreign country so that his body would work properly, that boy doesn't know how to stop. Maybe because the story isn't finished. Here is what is true as the 2026 World Cup begins. Messi has played 26 World Cup matches, more than any player in history. He has scored 13 goals, only 3 behind the all-time record. He has made 21 total goal contributions, equal with Pelé. He is, statistically, and by almost any measure, the greatest World Cup player who has ever lived. He is 38 years old, turning 39 on June 24th, during the tournament itself, between Argentina's second and third group matches. He came on as a substitute in Argentina's opening match, stepped onto the pitch, and within minutes of arriving, scored a penalty. Of course he did. There are real obstacles. His hamstring has been fragile. Argentina's squad is older than it was in Qatar. France, Spain, England, Brazil, and Germany are all powerful. The competition is the deepest it has ever been, with 48 nations competing. And yet, standing in the other half of the draw is Cristiano Ronaldo, also at his 6th World Cup, also 41 years old, also with everything still to prove. 2 men who defined an entire era of football on the same stage one final time, each chasing the one thing the other doesn't have. Ronaldo has never won a World Cup. Messi has won one. The question of who is the greater player, the argument that consumed football for 15 years, that filled stadiums and split friendships and generated more words than almost any sports debate in history, will now be settled not by statistics or by votes, but by what happens on the pitch in the next few weeks. On the 24th of June, 2026, Lionel Messi will turn 39 years old. He will be somewhere in North America, probably preparing for a World Cup match. Think about that for a moment. The boy who was told his body couldn't grow properly. The 13-year-old who signed his first contract on a napkin. The player who spent 20 years chasing a trophy that seemed designed to avoid him. The man who cried alone in a hotel room in Qatar after finally winning it. He is still here. He is still playing. He is still, somehow, good enough to walk onto the biggest stage in sport and change the outcome of a match in 5 minutes. We have never seen anything like this before, and we will never see it again. Whatever happens in this tournament, whatever Argentina's fate turns out to be, we are watching the final chapter of the most extraordinary football story ever written. Watch every minute, remember every moment, because when it ends, the silence will be very loud. And somewhere in Rosario, in a city on the Parana River, where football is a religion, and a language, and a way of breathing, a steel factory worker's son will finally, quietly, be done. If this story moved you, share it with someone who loves football. Subscribe for a new World Cup 2026 story every single week. And tell me in the comments, do you believe Messi can lift that trophy one more time? I'll see you in the next one.